Hey everybody, welcome to this week's The Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles. This week we talk about short-term rental investing. This Airbnb model, this HomeAway model, this VRBO model. Is it something that you really want to do? We have an expert, good friend of mine, TJ Tijani. He has built a portfolio of short-term rentals. He even does a class on short-term rentals that we'll talk about in this particular podcast. So DJ, hit that music, please.
Support for this program comes from the Digital Broadcasting Network, presenting podcasts and web series from everyday people who have an extraordinary passion to make the world a better place.
All right, this is Kevin Riles. We are back with, I'm excited today because I've seen this brother on all these social media platforms, and I got a chance to get him on The Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles. And I've seen him, doing stuff with my boy Tyron McDaniel, my builder, who's building my duplexes right now. And I've seen him, had other, we're also fraternity brothers. I've had other people talk about it, but, he didn't come, he didn't come talk to me, so I felt some kind of way about that. So, so I want to introduce you guys to TJ Tijani. Welcome to The Real Estate of Life, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Very blessed to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's a true honor. Thank you so much.
Good. Well, I, like I said, I've heard of kind of some of the stuff that you're doing through the grapevine, but we hadn't actually talked about it. And so I wanted to talk to you first and foremost. Our subject today is short-term rental investing with TJ Tijani. But before we get to that, I always like to kind of get the history of people and kind of, how they got into this and kind of their background. So give me kind of the Reader's Digest version of, where forth you coming from, your background, where'd you go to school, how'd you end up to where we are today?
Yeah. So, I mean, my story is a little unique. I mean, not that different. Originally I was born in Nigeria. So I came here when I was 8 years old. I started school here in the US in the second grade.
Okay.
Ended up being the first in my family to go to college. And I went to University of Houston where I studied mechanical engineering. And I graduated from there and I actually started working in oil and gas. So I was doing pretty well coming out of school. I was always traveling though. The thing is I was always gone a lot. I was working on the rigs like offshore. I was at with the position I was in, I was an installations engineer. I essentially was pretty much at the face of the economy when it comes to oil and gas. So, working offshore, working on the installation vessels and the rig to install subsea equipment. So I was doing that, but I was always gone, but I knew I really, really wanted to do entrepreneurship, and it just depended on what kind I wanted to do. So I started reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which was recommended to me by a good friend of mine, Junius. Junius actually recommended Rich Dad Poor Dad to me.
Shout out to Junius.
Shout out to Junius. And so I read that book, and it kind of turned me into the mindset of owning assets and real estate investing. So that light bulb just kind of went off, and I said, you know what, this is what I want to sink my teeth in. And so I started off my investing career. A lot of people kind of start off kind of wholesaling, but I went straight into buying and holding because I started looking into different real estate organizations in the city. And one particular one I joined, that was their business model. That was a particular strategy.
The lifestyles.
So the lifestyles, exactly. So so that's when I got started doing buying and holding. And so that year, I graduated from University of Houston in 2012. I bought actually my first piece of property I bought was the house I grew up in. So I bought the house I grew up in for my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I started living there. And so that was in 2013. Then in 2014, going to 15, I bought 3 more properties in Missouri City. And that's how I started my real estate career, started getting into some rental properties. And so still working in oil and gas. Then fast forward, I started getting into some wholesaling, started getting into some fix and flips. And so then fast forward into 2017. Now 2017 was when things kind of changed for me because as you probably know, with the oil and gas market, things kind of is up and down. It's always up and down. And so we were kind of experiencing a down at that time. And I'll never forget, they called us in. We had an all hands meeting when the year started and about how tough the year was going to be because there was just not that much projects going on anymore because of the price of oil had dropped so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got into a space to where a lot of people, a lot of great engineers, including myself, was given kind of an option, kind of an ultimatum of either partner switching to a role that was would be a significant drop in what in salary,
Right.
or just taking the severance package and getting laid off. And so I was already investing. I had investment properties. I kind of saw it as an opportunity. To me, I kind of say, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself. And I went ahead and took the severance. So I was laid off from my position. And this was in 2017. And so I kind of just started sinking my teeth into real estate investing. And that same year is when I found the short-term rental side of things. But it's crazy because when I tell people about my story, the truth is that I wasn't looking to get into the space. It kind of found me in a sense, because I was just doing market research on generating more leads, being a better investor. I was just essentially just developing and bettering myself. And so during my research, I came across the strategy of short-term rental investing. And at the time, I had a couple of properties I was already remodeling that I was going to transition into traditional rentals.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, you know what, I'm gonna try it on one of these properties. And so after I remodeled it, I just furnished it, and then I tried it. And I never forget, I was so nervous and I didn't know if it was gonna work or not. And I listed this property on Airbnb. It was the first platform I used. I listed the property on Airbnb. And I was at home and I started watching a movie, and I put my phone face down because I was like, man, I don't know if somebody gonna see it, who's gonna pay me, who's gonna rent this property. And so I never forget, somebody inquired. It wasn't even a booking, but it was a question that they had about the property. And I was just so excited. I said, oh wow, so okay, it's actually at least getting seen. And then the next day I woke up with 2 bookings. And so I said, okay, I like this route. I like the strategy. I think this is something I can sink my teeth in. And so I kind of just ran with it from there. I started studying what it takes to be a successful short-term rental investor. I started studying how to set up a business. I started studying the type of system that's needed, the type of team that's needed. And I found a great mentor, and that we were a whole kind of community, that, we have our mentorship calls. And so now I'm to the point to where I built my portfolio, started from one property. I'm at this point. This was the end of 2017 going into 2018. So going into 2 years in this business, and now I have 10. And my goal is
10 units or 10 properties.
So 10 units. So my my rental portfolio is kind of mixed up. So I have 10 properties that I own, but six of them are short-term rentals. The other 4 are traditional rentals. And then I also utilize the rental arbitrage strategy within short-term rental side. And so few of those units are rented as well. And so as far as units I own,
I'm gonna stop you there because I want to go back to your story to a quick second before we get into the.
Yep.
So I'm letting you know we haven't really talked, and usually when I have guests on, I don't do a whole lot of pre-talking because I want the conversation to be organic in the discussion. And so your story mirrors my story almost to the T. The only difference is I'm much older than you. Oil and gas, computer engineer. The only difference is I left Exxon to go to another company. I had an interim step before I started, and I got my real estate license to become a real estate investor. And my first property, believe it or not, because I know where some of your rentals are located, was on Wheeler and Delano, one block of the HPE building.
Wow. Yeah.
I lived in the bottom. I rented out the top. That was my first house. And so I got my real estate license at the time because I just wanted access to the MLS. That was it. I wasn't thinking that this was a career. I thought this would be a side hustle. And so, like you, real estate found me more so than me looking for. I knew I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't think that was the mechanism. So fast forward 21 years later, actually 24 years later, 21 in business ownership. I do this for a living. Commercial real estate and apartments and things of that nature. So I'm telling my story kind of quickly in yours for those that are listening that it's possible. Basically, I want people to know that it's possible. And you're a young guy. You're doing it way faster actually than I did it. For 5 years, if you think about it, you graduated 2012 or 2019 now. That's 7 years out, and you 10 units in. as well. And so there are a lot of people, especially our engineering-minded and accountant-minded and analytic-minded folks, they study long and they study wrong, and they don't do. They're like,
Right.
ooh, I'm gonna study, and they never actually do. And so, again, before we get to kind of your details of kind of your business model, what made you do? Like, what took that fear away? Or it sounds like there was some fear as to the short-term rentals, but when you were getting laid off, because I got laid off as well, and I started looking for another job, and I looked up at my board and I said, man, if I close all these deals, I'll make half my salary in the next 3 months. Why am I looking for another job? And I've never had another corporate job since then. So I teach at Prairie View. That's my benefits job, but that's another conversation. So again, going back to motivation, what was in you to say, okay, I'm not going to go look for another ME job or another oil and gas job or just another job in general. I feel comfortable that I'm gonna bet on myself.
Yeah, it's funny because when you mentioned that, and a lot of us in this engineering mindset, especially us that's so analytical,
Right.
we get into a phase of what we call in the investment world like analysis paralysis, right? And so, you start to look into when you study and you watch a lot of YouTube videos and you read all these books, but at some point in time you got to take action, and the action is where the magic
Where
happens.
you really learn, actually.
Yeah, that's
really where you learn.
Exactly. Even if you fail, we consider it failing forward, because even if you fail, you will learn, you will develop, and it's just going to make the next deal better. You're going to learn from it. You're going to grow from it. So for me, it was just more so there was a fire. It's something about when your back's against the wall.
Right.
It's something about that lights a fire that makes you just like, I need to go. I have to move. At the time when I was laid off, I was also planning a wedding. So,
right.
It was just like,
And by the way, if you follow TJ on social media, the flyest dressing wedding I've ever by the way, just like the whole color thing. But I'll let you guys at the end when I give you social media contacts out. Y'all can go check out his wedding pictures. But go ahead.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, there was definitely a fire lit. And so I knew that, just action has to be taken. And, I spent money furnishing my first unit. I spent money furnishing it. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, which is funny. Now, my mentor at the time, he was like, man, you sure you want to do it on this property first? Because he was like, it's a big undertaking for your first unit, because he always recommended, which at the time, now I see why he does it, why he recommends it. Probably starting off with a studio, maybe doing a rental arbitrage, starting off with a studio, a 1-bedroom, so you're not so overwhelmed for your first unit. But I went in and furnished the whole 1,700 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit. And so I went with it like that.
Look, and I'm sure you didn't get the furniture from a nonprofit. You wouldn't spend some money for the furniture too. So
we had to spend money for the furniture, because and that's the thing about the short-term rental space. You can't. There are different tiers of how you can set up your units. And if back in the day, like when I'll say probably 5 years ago, when Airbnb was very much so up and going, but it was still a trend. It was like something that people just wanted to try out and still wanted to do. At that time, you could have probably just set up any rink-a-dink couch, just picked up any bed from anywhere, a cheap bed, and just set it up. Probably don't have any pictures, no decoration, and you will still get bookings. But now, people are smarter. Your guests are smarter. They expect more. And on top of that, now there's actually more competition. So you kind of have to come with it. You kind of have to make sure that your units are nice, that your units are set up, and it's about providing the best experience for everybody that comes in there. And so I knew that going into it, thanks to the mentors that I had. And so, it wasn't a rinky-dink furniture. We definitely had to spend money and make sure that things were nice. Now, if you're savvy enough, there's definitely ways you can save money. There are things that you can save on. There are things that I highly recommend don't skimping on, like mattresses. Don't skimp on your mattresses. Make sure they're comfortable. Things like that. So there are ways you can save, but we definitely make sure that we spent the right amount of money to make sure that it was good to go.
So let me ask you this: we get past your story. You've been in it now for a while, and I know you have a mastermind class coming up. I think it was October 5th.
Yes.
October 5th.
Yes.
We'll talk more about that and give the people information, but I'd like to give them a little something, just, you know, some as we talk, some just general points to if they're thinking about this space and this possibility with their rental property, or they, even if they haven't started. You know, I guess first and foremost, why did you like short-term rentals? What you did the traditional model, you were doing the traditional model, which everybody's used to, and there's plenty of information out there on buy and hold, and this is how you rent a property, property management, this, that, and the other. But why did you choose short-term rental? What made you? Was it just curiosity, or did you think you could profit more, or give me some reasons why you chose it?
So a few reasons. I'll say that I'll put this reason at the top is the earning potential.
Mm-hmm.
If you are running your short-term rental property correctly,
Mm-hmm.
you should be making at minimum 3 times. You should be netting, and that's netting at minimum 3 times the amount you would as a traditional rental.
Okay.
So that's one thing. The second thing is that the unit or the property itself is being taken care of so much more. Like, I have traditional rental properties. Matter of fact, I have one of my properties in Missouri City. My tenant just moved out. I'm gonna go in there and do the make ready. We're gonna spend money on the make ready. But he wasn't the cleanest person, and so we're gonna spend money on the make ready, put it back on the market for it to be rented out. What I like about the short-term rental side as well is that once you set up the properties, you have to, when it's clean and ready,
Mm-hmm.
that is the same product you have to serve every person that comes in there. So it needs to be clean every single time. The turnover process has to be handled well, from the baseboards to the fans to everything needs to be clean. And so what that does is it really the upkeep of the property is way better than it was a traditional rental.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that I like. But the cons of that, of course, though, is that if you're running a short-term rental property, of course, you know, you got to have a team, you got to have systems in place. You got to make sure that it's being ran right. So it's more hands-on. So there's pros and cons. So it's more hands-on, but you have a more earning potential. But on the other side of this traditional route, it's more hands-off. But you know, you will make as much money, and you have potential of your property being torn up and stuff like that. So those are the kind of things that kind of turned me on to it, and it's a great service to provide as well, and just generally speaking. So that really, but the earning potential was kind of the number one thing that kind of turned me to it. And
where did you find? I mean, you said the earning potential. Did you do some level of research, or you talked to another investor and said, "Hey, man, you could really be making more if you did this"? Because when you did it, like you said, Airbnb was up, but it wasn't like out there. Like their data, there's so much data out there now where you can kind of get a sense of what your night rate should be and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But then that wasn't the case necessarily. So, what did you talk to someone that was doing it? It's like, oh, I need to try that.
Yeah, most definitely. So I talked to a few folks that were doing it. And then, of course, I did my own market research as well. So I looked at the Airbnbs in that area. And there's one software in particular that I'll throw out there, AirDNA. You can actually just print out like a market report from them.
And he said airdna.com, by the way.
airdna.com. Right. So you can actually pull up market research and see not only what the other units that are similar, is almost like running comps for short-term rentals, right? So you'll be able to see what the other units that are similar to yours in your vicinity are doing and how they're performing. You'll also be able to see what the occupancy rates are. But even if you don't want to pull, because you have to pay for that report. Even if you don't want to do that, there's a free route. You can just go on Airbnb, look up like Houston stays, and then just switch to the map view. And once you go to the map view, you can just pull up. You can select whether it's a entire home or whether it's just a private room, depending on your setup. And then you can see what these units are renting for and what they're going for. And so on top of that, you can actually go into their calendar to see how booked they are as well. So those are the kind of research that I was doing. I was adding up the numbers and I was like, oh, well, okay. So I should be able to get about $150 a night on a weekday. Oh, okay, I can get as much as $250 a night on the weekend. If I'm, 75%, 80% occupied, all right, let me add factor in these expenses. This is the earning potential. So I was doing all that math before I got into it to realize that, okay, there's a huge potential upside here.
So I'm gonna be a devil's advocate because I've heard this before. My wife and I actually spent a week this summer in DC while my daughter was in a program at Howard. We rented a Airbnb rental about 3 blocks away. Very similar area to kind of like the U of H TSU area around Howard. And so we rented the whole house. and got to talking to that property manager. He specializes in property management for short-term rentals. And so I asked this question. The devil's advocate says, well, yeah, but that's only if I can get it rented out for 70% of the month. Or, yeah, but you got these 3 or 4 different people all in the same month, and what if they, don't take care of it? Yeah, well, and so on and on and on. And so he and I had different conversations about that. So where are you on those quote unquote risk? Because that's what people will say is that, at least with a long-term renter, I'm dealing with one person. I might not be making as much money, but I'm dealing with one, versus if you have a really popular Airbnb, I'm dealing with 5 people in a month or 4 people in a month, and 3 of them might be great, and the 4th might be either high maintenance or they don't take care of the property. So
right. No, it's a very good question. And the thing is that just like in any business, there's some risk involved. Now, it's funny when this question kind of goes hand in hand as to when I approach landlords to pitch and position myself to pitch my business model to rent their units, to allow me to rent their units to put on Airbnb. One of the things that we highlight to them is how we screen the guests, how we actually make sure that we're getting the right people in these units at the right times. And so there are processes and there are things that you can put in place for that, to mitigate that, to make sure that you're getting the right people in there. One of them being, one thing I like about Airbnb, and when I recommend starting with Airbnb as well. Of course, there are other booking platforms, but Airbnb is the most turnkey one, so I recommend starting there. One of the things is you can actually set a parameter to where people can't instant book with you unless they have a positive or a good recommendation from another host. So you can have that parameter set. If they don't, they have to request, and then you can ask questions, and you can actually investigate to see whether you want to approve them. And you have to actually select to approve them. So one of the things that helps with that is putting the systems in place to make sure that you get the right people in there. Now, and then it also depends on if you're simply just okay with that. Like if you're okay with managing having 5 turnovers in a month to make and having multiple people come in there multiple times. So you have to that's something that you have to be okay with. Like, for example, we average our stays average about, I think, 6 days. 6 days. Our stays average about 6 days. So sometimes we can make 2 days. We'll do 3 weeks. So it just kind of depends on that. But
so who's renting your typically? Who's renting your? And I'm sorry, I just wanted, you said,
oh, you're good. Yeah.
Average stays. Who's typically renting your? For those of you, I know I have listeners that are and watchers that are outside of the Houston area, but most of TJ's rental portfolio or short-term rental portfolio is interlooped close to between downtown and the University of Houston and Texas Southern area for the most part. And correct me if I'm wrong, TJ, but I
absolutely right.
Additional information. So with that being said, I call you the urban, urban Airbnb market, which is fine because, you're close to all the freeways, you're close to downtown, you're close to University of Houston. So in that particular market, who tends to be your typical renter, and what are they typically doing? And as far as like career-wise, are they there for pleasure, or I live in the suburbs but I want to be a weekend urban person, or who's your typical tenant?
Most definitely. That's a very good question. See, one of the things that you have to ask yourself when you're setting up a short-term rental property, the number one question, what I tell people is, who are you serving? Who are you serving? And so you got to determine who you're serving and tailor your units to those folks. And that way you will be able to kind of niche down a little bit and actually make more money. So for us, being the locations that we are, and location matters, by the way. Location is actually a big deal. So all of, like you said,
real estate. Right. Still, I don't care what type of real estate you're doing. Location
matters. Absolutely true. But you're very, very correct. All of our units are within Midtown, Third Ward area, by University of Houston, and downtown, and close to the medical center as well. So you have to determine who you're serving. For us, we serve 3 main groups: people traveling for medical reasons, and that could be either people traveling coming in to the medical center to get a procedure done, or we also host a lot of doctors, and we host travel nurses sometimes. So people travel for medical reasons, business travelers. So you have huge business sectors here in Houston, which are downtown. We have a business sector, the financial sector in Galleria. There's an energy sector in the energy corridor. Even though I don't have any properties in the energy corridor area, we still serve a lot of business travelers because we're really, really close to downtown. And third group is like large groups. Just for whatever reason, whether it's a weekend, we have whether it's a large group that's here on business or whether it's a large group that's just here for the weekend or whatnot. A lot of our units, we have units from all the way down from 1 bedroom all the way up to 3 bedroom units, and we have so really, really determining who you're serving matters. For example, because we serve business travelers, we always make sure we have a workstation in every single one of our units. Because we serve business travelers. If it's a 1 bedroom, we have a workstation, whether it's a 1 bedroom or a 3 bedroom. Even our 3 bedrooms, we have workstations inside the bedrooms themselves. So like when I say workstation, like computer desk with a laptop computer desk with a chair. So we have that. But my units that are actually relatively close to the medical center, literally about half of the bookings that come in are because of some medical reasons. Probably more than that, honestly. I would say maybe 60% of our bookings are for some medical reason. A lot of times, it's a patient coming in for, like a guy just checked out now. He was coming in for an ACL procedure on his knee, and so really determining who you're serving is key. And that's one of the reasons that why we always make sure that our mattresses are quality, because we know that we're actually going to be serving a lot of people traveling for medical reasons. And you can imagine if they get a procedure done and they plan to rent our space to recover, it's very, very beneficial that mattress and that bed is very, very comfortable. People ask me, because one of the things I also do is I put a flat screen TV in every single room. So that's the living room and the bedrooms. Do you have to have a TV in the bedrooms? No, you don't. That's meant for sleeping.
Look, I'm gonna stop you there. DC for a week, and maybe we're spoiled down here in Texas, but the bedroom did not have a TV.
Did I have a TV?
My wife falls asleep by TV, whether she's watching or not. She has to have it on at least to fall asleep.
Right.
And so we were in the bed with a laptop watching Netflix. You know, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. You know, just put a little TV up here, a little smart TV. You don't even have to have cable. You know, most people have Netflix now.
Have their own say. They can log in. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Come on, exactly. So we and you can imagine if somebody come in for a medical reason, and we had a lady once. She had a procedure done in her brain. She was at my unit for 18 days. We have king beds in this unit, and so she came in and she was able to recover in our unit. And she was able to enjoy the TV, because you can imagine if people are recovering, they're not as mobile.
It's like a hospital.
A lot.
Yeah.
Like a hospital.
Right.
So exactly. Think about a hospital room, right? So it would be great if they can be entertained while they're recovering in your unit. So that was one of the main reasons we put TVs in every single one of our units. And so she was really, really happy. Her mom was like, "Thank you so much for even putting a king bed in there," because she had a procedure. She had a potential to have seizures while she was asleep. So it was great that her mom was able to lay next to her in a big bed that was big enough and comfortable for the both of them. So things like that, keeping the guest in mind, keeping the guest experience in mind is key.
You're really running a hospital. I mean, you're really running a hotel just in the separate.
Exactly. They're boutique hotels. Exactly. So things like that are very key. And what's important is the guest experience. Make sure that they have a good experience. And so when you have a listing up, you want to what really helps with the guest experience is they don't have to ask you a lot of questions on how things work, how to get places, wherever. So there are ways you can do it in layers. One way is your listing, right? So how much information does your listing have? Your pictures, the document, what you actually say, your descriptions. Because to be honest, if it's not in the pictures, if it's not in the description, they're going to assume you don't have it. So you want to be thorough on that front. And then another layer is when they actually get there, what are they seeing? Like even the thermostat. Is the thermostat kind of difficult to use? We replace all the thermostat. We use the Nest thermostat because the Nest is so easy, right? Just turn and set and you're good to go. So we don't get questions on, oh, how do you work the thermostat? Things like that is on how you help and improve the guest experience. Even our TVs are flash screens. They're the smart TVs with the apps built in, and the remotes are small and very simple. They have the Roku system built into the TV. So, and we provide Netflix and streaming TV cable with our units. And so,
for those that are watching on video, remote like this.
Exactly, very remote like that. Very, very simple.
Yeah.
So we don't get questions on how do you work the remote. You know, there was a time we went to Miami and the remote was just this big and it looked very complicated. We had to ask them,
one of those old
what are
school,
those?
all
Yeah,
inclusive. You have to have a PhD.
You know, exactly. They had it operated the speaker because it was a separate speaker system. It operated the speaker, operated the direct TV and the volume. We were like, okay, so, and then there were 2 remotes at that. So that really made it confusing. And so you want to make sure that you're providing and enhancing the guest experience by making things simple to where they can come in and enjoy their stay seamlessly without having to ask you how to do stuff.
Gotcha. So as we get closer to ending this, one other question. You've mentioned it.
I'm here.
Yeah, okay. You've mentioned it for a couple times. So just explain to the people what rental arbitrage is, basically, rental arbitrage.
So essentially, rental arbitrage is the ability to, that's one thing I love about short-term rental investing, because you don't have to own the units to generate cash flow. But I always encourage ownership at the end of the day, because ownership is that's your wealth building. That's your wealth. That's your generational wealth as well. So, but you don't have to own it technically to generate income as a short-term rental investor. You can do what we call rental arbitrage. Some people call it master leasing, where essentially you are renting a space and then taking that space and furnishing it and making it a short-term rental to where you don't own it. The tricky part to rental arbitrage is actually positioning yourself to the landlords and or the property managers themselves to get them to say yes to allow you to do it, and which is a huge part of what I teach at my master class. There are certain points that you need to make sure that you address with landlords. And when I talk to landlords, and I tell them I can sympathize, because I'm a landlord myself. I still have some traditional rentals. So I tell them I sympathize with them and show them how important, I know how important it is to make sure that you have the right person. Here's why I am the right person to rent this unit. Literally, it's like a business plan. It's a whole plan, and it's titled Perfect Tenant Program. I call it my Perfect Tenant Program. And when I position myself with landlords and I go through this business plan, it's essentially a business plan that shows them what you do and who you serve. And you know, a lot of people make mistakes on how they approach it. They throw out Airbnb and they say all this. And as much as I love Airbnb, to be quite honest, it kind of has a negative tone to some people. And so you don't throw that out there immediately like that. You got to have to position yourself. And the best way to do it is to show them what you do and who you serve. And there's a certain way to go about that, which is why
So I want to speak to this myself. So I as most people know that listen to this, I'm a commercial real estate broker. The only time I still do residential is for, you know, previous clients, family, friends, things of that nature. And so a buddy of mine from high school asked me to sell his townhome. And so we tried to sell it. It's inside the loop, very close to downtown. And for whatever reason, 3-story townhomes over there are just sucking wind right now, or at least last year, as far as being sold. It's too many of them, basically, in my opinion. And so I said, well, hey, you know, so you can cut your losses, expenses, because he had already moved out. Why don't you just lease it? He said, yeah, okay, you know, we'll lease it. And so lease it, got a lot of activity, and we ended up leasing it. Well, about 3 months later, he gets a call from his neighbor and said, hey, man, it's a whole lot of people going in and out of your property all the time. And so my buddy calls me and says, hey, you know, what is the, you know, who's on the lease? And I said, well, it's just the guy and his son is on the lease. And he said, well, something's going on. And then something happened with the hot water heater. So he sent one of his maintenance guys over there. And his maintenance guy comes and says, hey, man, it's like 3 ladies, one in each room. And like, you know, he was like, it's something else going on over there. So come to find out, they had replaced the locks and put a time and combo lock, smart lock on the front door. And then he happened to be out of town, my buddy, and was looking for Airbnb in Houston for a friend, and found his property with my photos, my professional photos that I had gotten taken.
What?
So they're Airbnb-ing the property and did not disclose to the landlord that they're doing that. And that's really how I found out about rental arbitrage. I knew about master leases for commercial properties. So I say all that to say that I'm letting the landlord know. So in this case, if he really wanted to, now they're paying rent. And where he's located, they're always going to get Airbnb because honestly, it's a great location. But the non-disclosure, he could evict them. And especially just even from changing the lock. So I think it's important, and not only important, but it's from a legality standpoint, you have to let the landlord know what's going on. Because again, you're in this, but if somebody took that Missouri City property and just changed it and didn't tell you, you would feel some kind of way about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what he's doing now, he's infringing and he's invoking the subleasing clause. So now he's actually leasing it. He leased it under his name, and then he's rented out to other guests. Essentially, by definition, that's subleasing.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of landlords have an issue with, and they don't know who's in the property or whatnot. So the thing is, when you want to do rental arbitrage, you have to first of all get an entity going, and that's one thing I recommend. If you want to get into this business, especially rental arbitrage space, if you don't have an LLC, go ahead and get an LLC going right now to start one. And so what that person should have done is he should have positioned himself to you and the owner, let him know why he would be great to rent that property and what his intentions were. He should have rented it under his business, because now if you rent it under your personal name, that's subleasing. But if you rent it under a business, now you're doing a corporate lease, and the corporate lease is understood that that entity is renting that space with the intention of somebody else occupying the space. So,
and I honestly don't think my guy would have had a problem with it. He just didn't tell him.
He didn't tell him.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, my guy wanted his rent. He's getting his rent.
Exactly, and that's really what's important.
Take care of the property. So
exactly,
just disclose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would have if I would have approached your if I would approach a client, I would approach your client with my portfolio. I would approach a client showing them all the pictures and my current listing, showing him the product that I have to provide every single guest, showing him how important it is that we clean and take care of it. I would have came in there and shown him how we insured it. I would have showed him how we make sure that we screen our guests to make sure that we get the right people in there. I would have shown him and confirmed with him that even though we're going to be hosting other guests, it's me that's going to be on the lease. My entity is the one that's going to be on the lease. So if any time you want us to furnish information on who's there, we will gladly send that over. If there's any issues, you come to us. You don't have to worry about who's there. We're here to handle it. We're going to also handle all maintenance that goes in that comes up in the property. So things like that.
Again, but at the end of the day, it's disclosure.
It's disclosure.
You're saying I'm going to disclose all this. We're going to basically be partners. You're going to get your rent. This is my business. We're both going to win. I don't have any problem with the master lease or arbitrage situation. I just brought that up because I think people need to know that that's the way it should be done, is what you're talking about, versus let me fake right and go left. Or as Tyron McDaniel says, the 52 fake out.
No, it's funny. I'm going to throw in one more story. I got a call, it's going on probably a month ago. I got a call from a buddy of mine. But he's actually friends with one of my cousins. Mm-hmm. But he contacted me. He said, "Man, TJ, I'm in some trouble." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I wish I talked to you before I even move forward with this." He started renting out this one of these really, really nice apartment complexes downtown. Mm-hmm. And he rented it. He tried to fly under the radar, like we're talking about now. And he started doing Airbnb. Well, within a month, they caught him. And they took him to court. They won. And even though he was like, "Okay, I'll move out. I'll move out.
I give up.
I give up." And they said no. They took him to court either way. They wanted to put an eviction on his record. Put an eviction on his record. Not only do they do that, they're forcing him to pay his entire lease term, the 12-month. They're forcing him to pay that all up front. So he got into some pretty big trouble. He said, "Man, I wish I had talked to you beforehand." So it's and you got to understand, especially like his big REITs. We call them REITs. These big REITs, they are now these days, they're actually like trained. They're trained to sniff out these findings, Airbnb properties. That's why I always recommend starting with owner occupants. Like these are, even if it's a 5-plex, even if it's a 30-unit property, a 50-unit properties, a smaller owner occupant property that you can directly talk to the property management or even the owner to pitch your business plan and position yourself to get those leases. To approach a REIT, they do have to allocate a certain percentage into corporate leases, but that's what it has to be. It has to be a corporate lease, and you have to have a very extensive portfolio to even approach them. And so those aren't the places to go to, especially if you're a beginner. So I don't recommend REITs at all.
Gotcha. So tell us about your mastermind class, and when is it, what's going to be covered, and how do people sign up for it?
Excellent. So this is my short-term rental playbook masterclass. So that's coming up October 5th. And this is the second, it's an 8-hour class. This is a full day class where I literally go into detail of the business. I open up, pretty much open up my business, the back end of my business, showing people from the system side to the furnishing side, to the acquisition side, to running it, building your team. The whole 9 is what's going to be covered. And I usually do 2 different classes. You do like a 3-hour class, which is more so like an intro class. And then I do a detailed 1-day class, which is the short-term rental playbook class that I'm doing. And this is the only second one, and this is the second and last one I'm going to do this year. So tickets are actually going pretty quick. We still have some spots available. So
what's the cost?
The cost. So if you for the 1-day class is $250. But if you get 2 people, if you do 2 people, it's $350.
Okay.
So you can do 2 for $350, or if you're by yourself, like if it's you and a partner, it's $350. But if it's just you by yourself, then it's $250.
Gotcha. And location, is it Central Houston? Is it a hotel?
It's gonna be pretty Central Houston. It's gonna be at one of our sponsors, their brokerage, actually. And so they're actually here in the downtown area. So it's going to be at a downtown. Plenty of parking. Don't worry about it. It's not like downtown. It's kind of closer to East Downtown a little bit. So plenty of parking. So I don't have to worry about that.
And do I leave with a playbook, or is it just call it a? I mean, I'm trying to be funny, but am I leaving with a workbook, or do I get any things that other than the information while I'm there?
Most definitely, great question. So you're gonna of course the information while you're there. You're gonna get because there's a certain language. Even when you do these leases, you do these corporate leases and short-term rental leases, there's certain language that needs to go on there.
Right.
I usually like to use my own lease agreement, which has a language baked in. But if the landlord wants to insist on using his own, or maybe they insist on using the track, there's a certain language that you want to make sure that you add on there. You get that language. You also get the softwares, all the softwares that we use. You're also going to be able to get the scripts. So when we communicate with our guests, all that process is automated. So from guest inquiries to when they book, and to the checkout instructions, the check-in instructions, all those scripts, you'll get all those scripts as well. And so there's a lot of things that come with it that you get, and you also get the business plan, which is pretty important. You also get the business plan, the perfect tenant program. You'll be getting that as well. So literally, you will get. There's no reason why you can't go out and make it happen after you leave this class. Matter of fact, the last 1-day class I did, which is I've only done one in the past. Within 2 weeks, I capped it at 15 people. Within 2 weeks, 5 of those folks had their first unit going.
Great.
You know? And so it's very, very beneficial. It's great value, great information, and you will leave out of there with everything you need to know to get your short-term rental business going.
Where do I sign up for it?
So the links in the bio on the social media platforms, especially on my Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram. So links in the bio on my Instagram, and
that's at TJ Tijani, by the way.
At TJ Tijani on Instagram.
And guys, what I'll do is I'll put the links in the show notes below this video, and for those of you that listen to it in your cars, go to kevinriles.com and go to our the podcast. You can find the links. So
perfect. Thank you so much for that.
And so finally, I'll ask you this. I know that in DC and in some here in Crystal Beach, in Texas, and some other places, some of these municipalities are trying to pass kind of anti-short-term rental laws. For instance, in Crystal Beach, they have an ordinance on books that says you can't rent your house out unless it's a minimum of 30 days, which basically tries to kill the short-term rental market. And so I noticed that you have your own separate website from Airbnb that you can get bookings, or at least direct you in that path. And I was wondering if that was your attempt to, just in case this business model starts to change because of ordinances, let me make sure that I can control my bookings. But I guess my overall question is, because you're relying on a third-party booking site, whether it be Airbnb, HomeAway, VRBO, whatever your platform of choice is, where are you on the what if, these laws start to kind of mess with this business model, not just you, but just in general?
Absolutely. No, that's a very, very, very good question. I'm actually glad you brought that up. So for one thing, the website I think is important for you to get to. And I recommend start getting your website, especially if you have like 4 units and above, maybe 5 units and above. Go ahead and get your website going, because now you're starting to build the brand. And so the brand is also important. As long as the other booking platforms are great, and I love them and they're great, but you also want to start factoring your own brand and start building those brands, because what we call, my mentor calls it, a single point of failure. So if something happens and there, like you talk about, all these regulations, a lot of laws being passed, and you're not going to be able to Airbnb or even use any kind of booking platform, you want to be able to have your own brand to where you can still garner those bookings through your own website. And so that's so the ones who are building their brands now, building those reviews, those are the ones who are going to sustain. That's also a sustainability factor to it as well. And so, but it's crazy because a lot of laws are passed, and depending on the market that you're in, depending on the city you're in, there's a lot of changes being made. They passed a law recently, even in Austin, Texas. In order for you to do a short-term rental in Austin, the property itself has to be a type 2 residential, meaning it has to be a 5-plex and above. So you can't do it on a single family. You can't even do it on a 4-plex. It has to be a 5-plex and above, whether you're doing rental arbitrage or whether you own it. It has to be a 5-plex and above. So things like that. Now I just passed a new law in New Orleans because in New Orleans, a lot of people were complaining about how New Orleans is kind of losing its culture because a lot of out-of-town investors are buying up all these properties and turning them into Airbnbs. And New Orleans is a great city to do Airbnbs, a huge Airbnb city. And now they just passed a law to where you have to own and live in a house to do it, to do Airbnb. Wow. Yeah, so that's a new thing. But apparently they're still negotiating the terms, because as of now, even if you live in the city of New Orleans and you own an investment property, you can't Airbnb it. But I believe from what I read, they're still coming back to that and sort of kind of revisit that, but they're trying to still preserve the culture of New Orleans. So it's different. I mean, San Diego, San Francisco, LA's having ordinance issues as well. I mean, it's all different issues that might come up in different markets. So you definitely want to be aware of that. And that's one thing I'll recommend people, no matter what, when you want to get into this business, study your market, look at the market research, look at what's going on in that city to make sure that city is, for one, short-term rental friendly. Especially one of the ways that you'll know is that if Airbnb actually remits the taxes on behalf of the city, and the city is actually making money on Airbnb, then that's another good sign that, okay, it's going to be there to stay, because the city's not going to want to stop that money train anytime soon. And so that's nothing to definitely look out for. But I built I do the website because for one, that's for me building the brand. And I don't want to have a single point of failure. If something happens to where I can't use Airbnb or Booking.com or Expedia or HomeAway, which I'm using all these platforms, I'm still able to garner direct bookings through my website. But in order for you to do that, you got to understand that there's marketing involved. You get into the marketing business as well, and there's a certain way you should go about that. So that's definitely why I do the website. But I'm glad you brought up the city ordinances, because it's not even so much that's very important. And even in a city like Houston, that's very short-term rental friendly, you still have to consider HOA, because even if the city's okay with it, that don't mean that particular neighborhood or that particular area or that particular apartment complex is okay with it. So HOA is another layer, is another thing that you have to worry about as well.
Yeah. And the reason I'm aware of that is I saw a property in Tiki Island. I said Crystal Beach, but I meant Tiki Island, that we considered ourselves, my wife and I, for investment / second home on the water type deal. And I was like, I'm just put it on short-term rentals while we're not, when we're not taking advantage of it. And started doing research and saw that they have the 30-day minimum stay. And they have such a small island that they're easily policed as to whether if you wanted to break the rule or not. And so you still could do quote unquote short-term rentals, but they would have to be a minimum of 30 days. And those are not as sexy as 3-night minimum or 2-night minimum or whatever the case may be. So it's just something to consider. But even with all that, I want everybody to know that this is actually a model that my wife and I, as in our own investment portfolio are considering. We're building duplexes now for long-term rental in areas that would not be good for short-term rental, but I'm thinking about building those duplexes in areas that would be good for short-term rental. So this is not just something that, I like to educate with this podcast and educate in general, but this is something that we're considering ourselves because we actually one day want to own hospitality properties. In other words, hotels. And to me, this would be a good training area for doing that long term. And so that's why I want to have TJ on to talk about this. Hopefully you guys will get information about the class. What's the website so they can check out your not the website for the class, but the website for your properties?
Oh yeah, the company name is Home Suites. So the website is www.bookhomesuites.com.
So bookhomesuites.com. And again, I'll put that in the notes of below this podcast. TJ, if they want to get in touch with you, shout out your social media or any other contact information that you feel comfortable giving out.
Most definitely. Definitely reach out to me on Instagram. I'm very active on social media, especially Instagram.
TJ is on the gram, y'all. He's on the gram.
I'm on the gram at TJ Tijani. That's at TJ Tijani Tijani. So definitely reach out to me on there.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you, coming to below little me and
oh no,
and talking real estate and talking short-term rentals. We'll have to have you back on, as you build your portfolio and learn other things. Want to encourage you guys to check out bookhomesuites.com, at TJ Tijani.com. And oh, by the way, at Kevin Riles on the gram. I'm on the gram too.
Of course.
I'm on the gram.
He on the gram too.
Yeah, I'm on the gram. But of course, you guys always can reach me at kevinriles.com. All my contact information is there. I appreciate you guys listening, for those that listen audio and for those of you that watch the video. I appreciate you guys' consistent feedback. I've been a little MIA here lately. Couple of weeks. Usually I'm weekly on these podcasts. I've waited a couple of weeks here. And to be honest with you, I've just been busy. So, but one of the reasons that this is a virtual, for those of you that are watching the video, we did this on a software platform, is because I've just been moving around so much. So you might start seeing a lot more like this. And Mr. Producer does his thing. He's going to chop this up and mixtape, screw it, and all the stuff that he does when I send him these videos. So TJ, again, thank you, guys. Thank you. I appreciate you. And for those of you, again, I appreciate you guys listening. And this has been the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles.
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it. True honor.
All right, Doc.
Hey, thanks for listening as always. Do you have questions about any of the topics I'm talking about? If you have questions, let me know. Email me at kevin@kevinriles.com. Again, that's kevin@kevinriles.com. I'm going to do a podcast just on the questions that you guys are sending me. So feel free to send them to me. Again, that's kevin@kevinriles.com.